So I work for North Northamptonshire, which has a joint planning and delivery unit. So it's 4 local planning authorities that club together for strategic planning. We had the first joint core strategy across England. We've got our second joint core strategy adopted. But they're 4 very small little local planning authorities, but they're planning for a huge scale of growth. So 40,000 homes by 2031, doubling the size of Corby as an ambition. You can see the sort of orange blobs next to all those 4 main towns, Corby, Kettering, Wellingborough and Rushden. They're all the urban extensions. Plus a new garden village just outside of that zone. And all the market towns have got fairly sizable chunky bits of development, 500 houses plus. These are in local planning authorities that maybe have 10 people working in each of the local planning authorities. These are tiny, they haven't dealt with stuff like this before. So my post was brought in about 10 years ago to kind of look at the quality that was being built then and see, given that scale of growth, how do we change things and how do we make stuff better? So, just going through some of the things I've learned over the last decade or so. The placemaking is in the policy, and it's going back to what David said about that strategic urban design, that strategic vision for the places, and absolutely building that into the planning policy is critical, which we all know. But just talking about Northants and how we did it, we had a very collaborative process to try and get people involved in how we were going to plan for these places to get that vision, which David's talking about really, is how do you start to make these places real for people, particularly when you're working across 4 local authorities where there's going to be different views between them. So we had a number of place shaping workshops working out what the vision was, what was special about our place and how we were going to make that happen. This is a fantastic graphic artist called Joel Cooper who we used to record all of these place shaping workshops. And what that came out was that we have a city-sized population, but it's spread across a number of small market towns. The connections between those market towns are not great, and the connections within the market towns to their centres are not great either. So connecting up was absolutely one of the most critical, fundamental parts of the whole strategy, and connecting up for walking, cycling, public transport, not just car. The connections, though, were also about connecting out, because the green infrastructure that is the sort of web that everything sits within was absolutely critical to how people felt about their place. That kind of urban-rural mix was what people valued about living in Northamptonshire. That's what they wanted. So how do we protect that but enhance it? There's loads of barriers of getting to the countryside, and and the quality of what you get there is not so great. Plus, it's also very different. If you go from Corby to get out to the countryside, it's really, really, really hard because it was built as a massive extension of Steeltown. It's all around great big ring roads. So those were fundamental, and then from that high-level place-shaping vision, we've now distilled that down to a number of very detailed place-making policies, which are all about sustainable urbanism, and about walking, cycling, mixed use, and again, going back to what David was saying, it's about actually now making those policies happen is really, really tricky. But at least we have got that now completely bedded into our core strategy. It's not just about housing numbers, it's about how you do it and what it delivers for the rest of the place. But it takes a really, really long time. Planning takes ages. This is the kind of slightly depressing stuff. This is about us knowing what we're doing wrong and being really clear about that so that we change the conversation and don't keep making the same mistakes. So we spend a long time getting pedestrian footpaths in, but we don't spend enough time making sure that the land ownership's right so that when you get to the end of the path, you can get across the stream to the primary school on the other side, or to the next site where you've got now just a fence. We are still designing around turning a bin lorry round in a street rather than places for children to play. We are building things with triple tandem car parking where no one will park their car anyway, and it will just be filled up with wheelie bins. These are current, these are not old. We are designing SUDs that are duds, that are not usable for anything else, that are not even easy to be maintained. We are designing in parking that no one will ever use anyway, that they just put their bins in and chuck their mattresses over their back fences. So there is a very tiny team working across 4 local authorities. So what do we do to make sure that we sort of try and focus, start tackling some of this stuff, this difficult stuff? we focus on the things that are going to last the longest because I've only got a certain amount of time. So I focus on the sort of the skeleton of the places, about that connectivity point that we were talking about that was so critical to Northamptonshire. So we focus on the structure, the skeleton of the landscape and the skeleton of the place. Because other things, planning focuses a lot on use, but use has changed the most. So we focus on the things that are going to last the longest. This is Tresham Garden Village, which is something I've been working on for quite a long time. It's one of the first of the 14 garden villages that government's been funding. There was an original master plan, but the local authority were not happy with that master plan and worked with the government funding to bring in a kind of critical friend master planner, which looked at how do we make this a walkable place, how do we embed in and make sure that the structure is reflecting of the place where it is. And so rather than going into the detail of an urban design master plan, we went to a framework first to kind of get those principles locked in, which looks at how do you cherish the landscape you've got. It's on an old airfield, so there's not much left, but rather than putting the neighbourhood centre right in the middle, which would obliterate the existing copse, you use that as the centre. You retain every bit of landscape you've got. You use the tree planting around to connect up woodland. You look at how you actually make walkable blocks that connect everything up, and you tie that in so that it is locked into the process and can't get watered down. We use space syntax quite a lot in all of our master plans, and not just to see how connected the existing networks are, but also, so this is Rushden and Higham Ferrers. You can see the existing town on the right-hand side of the slide with the most connected or integrated streets glowing red at the centre of the settlement. And then at the bottom you can see the blue streets, which are the least integrated. And we showed the councillors this, and they said, those people there in the blue streets, they all get in their car and drive to Bedford. They don't use our town centre at all. They're not part of our place. We do not want to do that again. So then we put the proposed master plan for the other side of the ring road, which is where the 3,500 houses coming to Rushden are, and surprise, surprise, it was all blue. Well, not surprise, we could tell that. But we had a really nice graphic. We could go back to the councillors and to the developer and say, no, we are not doing this again. This will not integrate into your town. This will not improve your town centre. This will not achieve all those benefits you want. This is just houses on the edge. So we are now in the process of redesigning that master plan so that it is properly connected and extrudes the streets from the town into the new place. It provides proper cycling and walking routes to connect to the town centre so that it can support the town centre, which is what they want. It will need to do a lot to the town centre as well to make them go there, but at least they won't be completely cut off. So there's some work on that, and it's also looking at hedgerows and things as well as part of the connection. We use Building for Life. This is basic stuff. This is about getting the conversation right about the basics. But we use that on all our schemes, and we use that to go back and look at built places to judge whether we're failing or not. But this stuff is really difficult because it involves lots and lots of different people, and by and large, planning is not very good at talking to itself. It talks development management officers will not talk to policy officers. Highways people don't talk to anyone else, tree people don't talk to anyone else. They all have their own different languages and no one understands each other. So we have to have all these cunning processes to make people talk to each other and understand each other. And the way we do that is kind of focusing on the place and getting them to remember all of those different things. This is just a slide from a presentation I went to called Designing the Underworld, which sounds really exciting, but it's basically about how complicated it is underneath our streets. We think that's complicated. Wait until you get above ground and you're trying to add in even more stuff on totally new places. So it's really hard to make multidisciplinary working happen, but we have to do it. So the way we do it in Northants is we have what we call in-house design surgeries, which is all through before planning applications are submitted, it all has to come in through pre-planning, and it's all a structured process to make sure everyone talks to each other. And it needs to be paid for by the developer in advance, because this level of integration can't happen with local authorities that are cash-strapped and don't have all of those specialists at hand. We also use design review panels a lot, because they have to be multidisciplinary, and that means that you get in the right people to talk about the sites, to try and fix those particular problems on that particular site. So this is just a little tiny scheme just to show the kind of this is sustainable urbanism not. But this is what you'd have to deal with on a day-to-day basis of a sort of an urban design officer in a local authority. How do you make sure that streets are not fronted by back garden fences and bins? You know, this is but that kind of level of detail counts, because no one will walk along that street if they feel unsafe. So walkable places need to feel safe. But this is in the context of massively cutting the number of people who are working in design in local authorities. Not only is it dropped to the lowest level, but it's going down. So you've got people like me that are covering 4 local authorities, but there are lots of places with nobody. So we all need to do this stuff. It can't just be that you rely on your design officer to talk about this stuff. Everybody has to fight this fight because it's too important not to. And you do need to recognise you can't know everything. So we get in a lot of expertise. We've had a design review panel, as I say, but we bring in specialist consultancy. And there are other emerging options like public practice, which is about putting in people from private practice into one-year placements in local authorities to do this public service work. So for, again, Tresham, we had a number of reviews and workshops to get people involved and getting in extra support, particularly for things that's specialist. This is about people, and I think this is perhaps the way to think about it, is we think about as child-friendly approach to our places, because that's a way of making sure that people actually don't just spend the whole time looking at bins or cars. It's about trying to be holistic. So children need quality public space. They need quality public space that's fun. This is Holton in Rugby, which has got play on the way, very nice natural play and good things to do. But they need to be able to get there. And that is probably one of the hardest, trickiest things. But unless we start talking to councillors and highways officers about children being able to walk independently to school and looking at our plans and places now, we're never going to change anything. So this is the nitty-gritty of policy, getting to, the before to the after. Just go back. And forward. This is from the Design Companion, but this is the stuff that we all need to be guarding against in professional careers, to make sure that things don't get watered down all the time, because they do so easily. And front boundary, this is just residential design. Highways taking control of everything, about bin lorries and people being able to drive everywhere all the time. We just need to keep fighting against this stuff, because no one will ever walk anywhere unless we do. And remembering what the view is down the end of a street. Again, it all goes back to quality, walking, the place quality of what we're trying to kick out at the end of this. So all of this has been tied up into what we're calling a place shaping SPD, and I think it's going to actually end up being a website because it's so massive. What the things we've learned is that if in local government you ask people for help, you ask private practice, but you also ask academia, they help you. So ask for help and you will get it. People understand, most people working in this industry are actually passionate about making good places, so they will help you do stuff. We also know an awful lot about our place, and I don't think we tell people enough about that. So we're trying to make it easy to give people the local context, not just the policy, but what we know, our space syntax information, our landscape character information, our biodiversity information, our ecosystem services information, all of that stuff for free to the development industry, because we want our places to be better. And this is my other top tip, trees. This is just conventional house types from a standard volume house builder, but the trees and the way that the street has been arranged mean that street will get better with age, whereas often buildings won't. This is Poundbury, but trees for shade, trees as a bollard, trees for all sorts of good things. And fight. This stuff is worth fighting for. So I think I am a bit of a renegade, but I think, you need people we're all got to fight for this stuff, because it's more important than just one person can solve. It is multidisciplinary. It's all our problem.